Mark Wheatley, and welcome to episode 155 of the Wheatley podcast. Thank you very much for joining us, wherever you might be. I did something weird with the camera. I think it looks better. And I'll introduce my guest in a minute. He is here, which is great because normally it's the Zoom thing, and Josh was here the last time in person. It's a lot better. But thanks to Stella O'Malley for coming on last week to talk about psychotherapy and her books. Please go back and listen to it, especially if you've got young kids. It's a very interesting listen. Support us on the Buy Me a Coffee if you would. The link is in the description. So Josh Chanin is back, as you can see. The record holder.
The record holder?
Easy. I think you were the record holder last time, because I think you've been on...
Too many times.
Probably.
Yeah.
It depends on the listener.
A lot.
So I think you've been on 4 plus the quiz thing.
Yeah.
So I believe it is.
There might be one person who wants to listen to me. So that's cool.
Marta.
I'm not even
not sure.
She wants to. She says that crap all the time.
But you're obviously second guest of the year. I don't know if I mentioned it to Stella. I don't know if I brought it up, and I would have been interested. If I didn't, it would have been interesting to bring up, because she's a psychotherapist, and this whole idea of New Year's resolutions, yay or nay.
I sort of do them, I suppose, but I think if you're someone who's going to make a success of resolutions, you're always making them all year. So January is just another excuse to do it, I suppose. But I think most people kind of understand for most people it's a waste of time. And they kind of know it, and they play the game, and they go, "Oh, I'm going to do it this year. I'm going to do it this year," and they might really believe it. They're going to do it this year, and then they know they're not.
I think, because it is a lot of that. People already know. Well, the majority of people already know that they may not get past January.
Yeah, I was surprised at that. I didn't know it was quite that bad. I thought they got to February, March, and then the gym got cancelled and all that sort of stuff. I didn't know it was like a few days.
It's very bad, though.
No, it's not bad.
Well, you we were having a chat earlier on about. We talk about dieting is a big thing. A lot of people's resolutions would be that, and you said, well, your idea, I guess, and you do it a lot. You're very fit and you look after yourself. The psychological side of it, and that's the hardest part, isn't it?
I think it's everything. I think it's as I said earlier, I don't think it's knowledge. It's never knowledge, or very, very rarely is knowledge, because our culture knows what it needs to do, because it doesn't have to be this perfect formula. It's just whole foods, calorie count. It's just boring. It's boring stuff, and no one wants to do it, so you don't get the results. But we want it because it's hard. But when we experience the hardness of it, there's no point doing it. And psychologically, if you can't train yourself to be used to it sucking and it not being fun and it's just miserable, because I think our culture is almost anti-boring. We don't allow ourselves to be bored. We can't be bored. Yeah. And we don't allow ourselves to for it to just be crap sometimes. Yeah. It's just crap. And sometimes life is just crap wall to wall, and it's fine.
Boring and crap.
Yeah, boring and crap at the same time. And yet you can still enjoy it. If that makes any sense, because there's an acceptance. If you just go, well, it's not supposed to be fun, almost immediately it's more fun. Yeah, it's this pressure to resist the boredom and for it not to suck. I've got to be happy all the time. I've got to feel good all the time. And as the more you do that, the more it's too elusive. You can't catch it.
But for some people, the chase is everything. Yeah. Oh, and whether they're going to catch it or not. And you have this, and you've spoken to me about your thing is you're really happy with the family and wanting to be with the family, and that's really important to you. And then for others who have a family, not talking about me now, but for others who have a family, they're almost trying to run away from it, to chase something else, as if the family they've worked on, they've married someone and they've had kids or whatever it might be, as if this was this is what we're supposed to do, but we're really after this. It's very strange to me that why are you still chasing these things? Well, I think it comes back to a culture, because our culture, it's more about hedonism, it's more about pleasure, it's more about enjoying everything, and it's that's such an easy thing to sell. Whereas when you're trying to sell boring and not exciting and these sort of things, that's a tough sell. But ironically,
It's what leads to the actually enjoying it, because there's an acceptance and there's a letting go of this insistence that it has to be fun. Like sometimes it's crap playing with the kids. It's tough because there's no, like, they're too young.
Yeah.
It's not like they like, you'll start playing with the trains and then they'll go off and do something else, and it's a bit like you kind of like, this isn't that much fun. But you just have to be in it. You have to, it has to stay boring. And it's like, I want to eat that. It's like, but it sucks that I can't eat that. But that's okay as well. And our culture isn't that, because as I say, I think it's a mixture of the way we're marketed to all day, every day. It's so easy to sell pleasure is happiness. So if you're not feeling pleasurable, you're not happy. Whereas that's not really what happiness is. I think we should be aiming at something that's being comfortable in yourself. And like, as soon as you accept that your life isn't this exciting, driving Porsches and Ferraris and going out every night and living in villas and all this, as soon as you accept that, you're almost giving yourself permission to just enjoy the life it is. On paper, it's boring to everybody else, but it's almost as if, because I've accepted that it's boring, I've started to love it, and I really start enjoying it. And I like the struggle of calorie counting and putting it on paper, because you can't lie to yourself that way. And there's a back and forth, like we've talked about it before. Like there's obviously an animal part to your mind, whether it's your spirit animal or what, but you should picture an animal and you're trying to train it. And the more you can train it, the more you can stick to resolutions and you can actually achieve things, because you're training it. But no one really sees it that way. They think set goal, just do goal, and it's easy. Or you can break it down rationally. And that's never the way to do it, because you need to list what are your challenges going to be? What are possible solutions to the challenges? And you want to look at it that way, because there's an all or nothing. And the jiu-jitsu belt system is probably a good analogy, because if you go in as a white belt and you see the black belt do something and you try it, it's obviously not going to work. and it's the same skill, because eating healthy, living healthy, training your animal brain is a skill that I've developed over probably 15 years now. So to someone else looking at my life, it's like, well, he's obsessed with that, and that's fine. Like I would call that a rationalization. Like you're trying to not feel as bad. So it's easy just to say, oh, he's obsessed. That's cool. That's what we all do it to a degree. It's always a temptation to do, yeah, but they have it easier, or yeah, but whatever it is. But if you can train it, then as I say, you can sort of do what you want then, because you know how for it to just suck. Because all boredom and things sucking is your animal brain going, I don't like this, stop it. I don't like it, stop it. Whereas just like a child or an animal or something you're trying to train, you know it's good for you.
Yeah.
And eventually the animal knows you're not going to stop doing this. So I've talked to Martin Costello about this. I thought I was the only nutter, but I'll go on a run or just training or whatever it might be, exercise on your own, no music, no podcast or anything like that. And you meet the animal. It's there, like saying, what if you get injured? It's cold, you probably haven't eaten enough. What if this happens? What if you've got to do this tomorrow? So what if you're getting it? All these sorts of, all the excuses and all the rationalization as to why you should quit. And it's always questions like, why are you doing it? And if you learn to try and answer those, and that's all part of the training, the animal eventually is on your side. And then it starts giving you motivation, because it's almost as if it goes, he's not stopping this. This isn't working. Yeah. And so it just gets on board. And it'll start giving you motivation and reasons to keep running and keep training and doing all that. So it's hard to get to that realm, but that's part of the training. Just as I say, the same with jiu-jitsu, like the moves that you can do at a higher belt, it's just, you can't do them when you first start. Yeah. So when people come off and go, right, I'm going to eat this many calories, 1,200. Yeah. So they cut the calories by 2,000. They effectively weight cut. It's like a fighter's weight cut. They're going to go to the gym 3 times a week. Full intensity, high intensity, straight off the couch. And then that's going to be fine, because they've just decided they're going to do it. And it's like, that's black belt level stuff. Yeah. Like training every day. You can't do that overnight. Like even if I take a couple of weeks off, I've still got to ease back into what I was doing. And I think we don't take that mentality to it, that like, this is black belt level stuff, or, higher level skills. Like discipline is a skill I think you can build. And I think that's why most people's resolutions fall apart, because they try and do everything overnight.
That's interesting, because you see that in the gym sometimes. The person goes in and they're just going full on, and you're like, just take a breath, calm down. But let me ask you though. So you talk about like your life, and you do your things, and you live your family, and you count your calories and stuff. But what about risks then? Because at some point, maybe, like, I don't know, but I'm saying, we're just going to think hypothetically, you are going to take a risk at some point. If you've trained your brain to think a certain way and be a certain way, how does that come into your head, and does that break that kind of concentration of it?
Well, when you say risk, what do you mean? Like physically, financially, or?
I mean, well, it can be not really physically, because I know you're fit, strong, you know what you're doing. But we'll say financially. We'll say like, a change of career, like it's something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's much harder with kids.
Yeah.
But it's the same discipline. Like, it's not like the discipline you need for training and eating right is any different from the discipline you need to do anything. Like, take on a new career, deal with criticism, deal with negativity from other people and yourself more than anything. I think negativity from other people is nothing but your own animal going, yeah, they're right, aren't they? Because all they do is trigger what you already think. Whereas if you've trained your animal and you almost know where the thought is coming from. So is that me or is that the animal? Because there's always, like, there's thousands of reasons not to do it. And I don't think you have to be really confident to do something, or really believe in yourself, or have a crystal clear image. I don't believe that. I think you can still have all the doubts, still not think it's going to work, but just do it anyway, and just keep going down that road. Because like on your run, when your animal's saying, stop, don't do it. That's the same thing that's happening when you're trying to start a business, when you're trying to do something else that's out of your comfort zone. It's the same rationalization of, well, what about this? What about that? What about that? It's all the animal. And like with the running, you learn to calm it down, and you just go, yeah, we're going to do it anyway. It's as if the animal's like, oh, okay. So you're almost leading your animal, just like you would a dog, or even a child. Like, you can't force them to have to do this. Like, you have to train 3 times a week now, and you have to eat. And you've not explained why. You've not worked on slow increments. You've done none of the real hard work of it. The kid's just going to go, nah, I don't want to do this. Yeah. So after a week, especially if you haven't lost any weight, heaven forbid you've gained weight, and you don't understand, it's like, forget it, I'm leaving. Yeah. It's a tantrum, basically. So it's the same process when you're starting something new that's risky, because that's what training is. Going and starting a resolution, they're scary because it's a risk. You sometimes you've got to turn away from friends that want to do certain habits or whatever. You've got to kind of turn away, or even your own family. You've got to turn away from it, or the culture. You've got to turn away from it. So it's always risk and the animal panicking. And so if it's trained to deal with the same response, which is stop it, then you can kind of take the discipline that you've had in this area and move it over to this, and think, I'm going to try and start this business. It's probably not going to work, but I've got to find out. And that's it. It's not like rah.
Yeah, but should you be like, and this is easy for me to say, but like, should you be thinking it's probably not going to work? Because, like, I know it's a realistic way of thinking, but at the same time, are you getting off to a bad start already?
I think it's the pressure, the American pressure of positivity. You've got to believe in yourself. I don't think you do. I honestly don't think you do.
Good.
Because I don't believe in myself in jiu-jitsu. I still don't think I know what I'm doing. Every time I roll, I think, well, this isn't going to go well. And then sometimes it just goes well. And I don't know why. And I know that thought of, it's probably not going to work. I know where that's coming from, the animal brain. Whereas my rational brain can see that, like, well, other people have done it and they've known less, or the rational brain can look back at evidence of it adding value, or whatever it might be that you're trying to do. I've done it before and it went all right. There might be a small group of people. It doesn't have to be massively. So it's more that this might not work probably isn't true.
Yeah.
What it actually is your animal brain saying, this isn't going to work. So don't even try. Don't take the risk. But part of the training of the animal is to go, yeah, I'm just going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And then the animal brain goes, no, all right, okay. And then every now and then it'll work its way up and go, this isn't going to work. What are you doing? You're in over your head. You're an idiot. Da, 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 da. But then I don't think those thoughts are going to go away. Maybe even ever. Like you look at some famous people, they clearly still struggle with it.
Conor McGregor.
Yeah, I mean, you really.
No, I can't do this every episode. I can't bring it. No, go on.
Like, so it's I think it's more about knowing that they're just rationalizations. And I think the self-belief thing and having to believe you can really do it, fair enough. Like maybe when you're younger, it's arguably delusional, isn't it? When you stack it up, you think this is never going to work. But so maybe when you're older and you've experienced a few things and maybe you're a little bit more cynical or you've just seen it not go well, then you've still got to kind of be delusional to think it's going to work and you have that much control. So I personally don't think you need the belief. I think you can still give it a go and learn as you go, because I think the lack of belief is just the animal brain trying to keep you safe and keep you from taking the risk. And it's not a fact. It's just your own opinion of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And that kind of risk and, following through on something like that. And you're a big believer and, it's worked for you in consistency. And I think like where I get my consistency from is probably two negative things. Anxiety and anxiety and OCD. And it's like, if the way I think about training, for instance, right, and maybe podcast maybe to a lesser extent, but training in particular, right, I think, right, if I don't go training, I won't sleep and I fear lying in bed in the dark because I overthink everything. So that's kind of a push of anxiety. And then the OCD is like, well, today is, say it's a Friday. Today is Friday. This is what I do on a Friday. I have to go do 2 sessions of CrossFit, then jiu-jitsu, and whatever happens after that is just part of your job or whatever. You have to teach some classes. So that's what drives me. Like, but because you've trained for years and years, like, where did that consistency come from?
It varies from day to day.
Does it?
Like a lot, like I think you need things you're running from some days and things you're running to other days. I think there's always little techniques and tricks that you only learn once you're trying to train your animal and trying to figure it out. So like, say I'm getting up at 5 a.m, it's dark, it's cold. There's no real reason to get up. I could just get 4 hours sleep, or I could do this and that. But I have learned from falling off, getting back on, falling off, getting back on enough times that, like, if I stay on and I put that little effort, because all it is a couple of minutes. That's all it is. It's that, I'm going to do it anyway. It's just that little painful bit of boredom or that little bit of pain. If you can sit there in that pain and just get the action moving, then a few minutes in, like I was saying, your animal brain goes, oh, sweet, I'm into this now. And I know for the rest of the day, like you're describing, I'm going to be more resilient. I'm going to be more positive. And like, even if it's not necessarily, I'll just enjoy the day more. It's more, I'll rise to less things. So if things annoy me, they won't get to me. Or I won't say the stupid thing or do the stupid thing or make the mistake or slip or whatever it might be. It just gives me that resilience. So I almost feel like doing those things of training, because I feel the anxiety is coming from the animal. So when you go and do the training, when you do something that you don't particularly want to do, but you know is good for you, when you do that, it's almost as if the animal just rewards you for it. And it just, it's more relaxed and it doesn't rise to as much. You're not as emotional. You're much more able to kind of be in control of your thoughts and your emotions, because it's almost like you've given it what it needed. You've given it a bit of exercise. You've given it good nutrition. You've given it enough sleep. All these boring things that if you just keep ticking them, your animal's like, oh, I could do this. Yeah. And then it listens to you.
Because sorry, but you know what's funny about that? Like you mentioned about, because sometimes you don't think of what you said about that 2 minutes or whatever, that kind of moment where you're like, I can go this way, I can go that way. All you're thinking about is, oh God, it's like an hour of training, and you're thinking, but it really is like just a moment. Like, and for younger people, I think it's harder because there's lots of distractions and stuff.
Things to do.
So
that don't suck.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, like, because it is like they want to be. It doesn't have to be ripped or whatever, but they want to be fit and look well, and their skin look well, all that kind of stuff. but it is so much easier just go like go down the park and drink some beer, like, and that's where the consistency is harder. It's different for like, I know we have a few years between us, but it's that we have the same kind of mindset of like, we know why we're doing it.
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult for 18, 19-year-olds to do it.
Well, the reference point.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, you and I, we've fallen off, gotten back on, fallen off, gotten back on. And it's that process that's taught us, actually, I do feel better long term if I do this. And then you forget it. And then you feel like crap. And then you're like, and you start doing the habits. And I almost feel like I'm paying my animal brain. I'm like, right, I'll do this for you today. And the rest of the day, you give me resilience. You don't give me too much grief and all that sort of stuff. You know, nothing particularly negative. And that's kind of a negotiation that you have with it. But that's through years of messing up when I was 18, doing what everyone else was doing when I was 18, because you haven't the reference point, you haven't the influences around you. If you're not lucky enough to have those influences who've taught you from a young age about the fact that there's these two entities in your brain and you've got to learn to manage it, because it can be your ally and it can be your enemy and rip you to pieces. And you and I both have felt both of those things. And it's only through that experience that we learned it. Whereas when they're 18, it hasn't been hard. Like, they haven't been through enough crap or have it go right to be like, right, there's a pattern there. I should probably listen to it, or I should start following it. So I think it is much, much harder for young people. But that's the why we all want it. Because if it was easy, we wouldn't respect it. It's just like, you know, we can afford so many things. So people having a phone, we don't find that impressive, even though objectively it is quite hard to get that much money and pay for it and all that sort of stuff. But everyone's got a phone, so it's not impressive. And so because it's not impressive, we're not really that bothered about it. It's just a normal thing. Whereas a six-pack, being in shape, having a discipline, being in control of your emotion, like, that's always our favorite character, most people's favorite character, maybe just mine, in a movie. The one who someone's getting shouting at them and they just go, and they just keep eating or something, or whatever it might be. That's cool. But that's through years of training the animal. And that's why we want it, because it's hard to get. And so I just think that's the reward for it.
Yeah.
That's the hard bit, that little activation energy of, I can't be asked doing this. That pain of, I'm going to do it anyway. That's the bit most people can't get over. So if you can get over that, I mean, you can pretty much do whatever you want. Yeah. You can figure it out.
Let me just, you have a little sip of your water there, and I'll read the ad. So, Fusion Training Centre, Monksland Athlone, a place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts, and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Centre or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Centre, train like a warrior. So myself and Josh actually were training just before this, actually, and
that's why I'm so relaxed.
Yeah, but that's because that's what you were saying about that. Like, you feel, the funny thing, we won't talk about too much about jiu-jitsu because we talked about that, we covered that, but it's just that idea of like, when you are relaxed, but your kind of body's kind of exhausted, and because you've used every bit of your body, and it is a perfect example as you were talking about it, like, and I'm thinking of, this is exactly how I feel now, like, it's that, like, and the rest of the day is, you know, it's
you don't overthink things.
It's that, like, and because I would say we're both pretty, you know, good at overthinking things, you know, particularly, but we won't go into that. But there's another thing I want to talk to you about, because I know we're both fans of Kanye West's music, but it's not just Kanye, because there's been a lot of people that the conversation around the art
I think you'll get cancelled for mentioning
for sure, and let's hope so. It's one less thing for me to do, right? But no, but it's funny because it's not that. Sometimes when Michael Jackson comes on the gym, I immediately think of what the allegations.
Tough, yeah.
I love Woody Allen's films, and I've got about 20 of them. But I'm a little bit like, I don't know. He hasn't been found guilty. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like Kanye West, just some of the stuff he was saying there recently he's kind of the deep end. How do you feel about like that idea of the like art versus the artist?
It's always something I consider, because it is every time because I love Michael Jackson's music.
Yeah.
And I listen to it, and it brings you joy, it makes you feel good, like, and that's not nothing. Like, that's a huge thing for people, and it like it's music and art really serves a purpose for people. Like it's a healing, and it can bring people comfort. Like it just, because sometimes say you can't, maybe you don't understand therapy, or you haven't got a mentor, or you haven't got a particularly good relationship with people or your family. Music can be, there's a lot of wisdom in there. And whether it's the artist's like genuine opinion, or whether they're tapping into something that resonates with us all, and they're almost able to tap into it, that still serves such an incredible purpose for people that it almost has to be separated from the person, the flawed person, the like all the shadowy parts of the person. Because I mean, this is something I had a debate with once, and they were talking about how, you know, someone, if they're not perfect, you can't really listen, or, you know, it's almost like they lose their credibility. Sorry.
Okay.
And I said, well, what about Martin Luther King? Like, he had an affair, and he was notoriously known for having affairs. Does that mean his message wasn't vitally important for our culture, and it didn't change everything in a positive way? Because it's like now he'd get cancelled because he was having an affair, and it's like, and we'd lose that message that so many people needed because of his personal flaws and his issues on his, you know, whatever it might be. And they didn't really come up with a good.
They didn't listen.
They didn't. They just went, well, no, I think you're wrong, like that. So, you know, like, fair enough. It's the same idea that, like, okay, Martin Luther King was social movement, so perhaps, you know, that's more concrete than the idea of art and music. But the joy it can, the comfort and the healing it can bring to people, it would be a shame to throw the baby out with the bathwater because they were such flawed people. Yeah. And so I think that's where I stand with it all. Like, as I say, like, Michael Jackson was clearly, the boy had no chance. Like, whatever it was, even without all the allegations, he had no chance, because there reaches a point with fame where people stop saying no. And we do not do well when we stop getting told no. And there's 100 ways of being told no. And you can see it with celebrities. They don't have people around them. The ones who fall off or struggle, they don't have people around them saying no. And I think it's really clear.
I think that's
Kanye's lost all his no guys.
And he's unwell. You know, he's talked about his bipolar before, and he's talked about not being on his meds for bipolar, and that obviously messes you up. But there was I don't want to call it a performance art piece, but it almost felt like that when he was on the Alex Jones show, you know, because he was
something.
It was very odd, you know, because you sent it on to me, and then I saw the full thing, and he was wearing some sort of tights on his head or something. But like, if Alex Jones is saying to you, you're going a bit too far, then you've got serious. And it was almost like he was doing it to just ruffle feathers at that point. You know what I mean?
It feels like that. And I think most people are forgiving of the fact that we know he has bipolar. So there's a certain, look, he doesn't mean it. He can't possibly mean it. I mean, Alex Jones was trying to throw some T-balls, like, we don't like the Nazis.
You like his uniform. You like the uniform, doesn't it? It's like,
no, I love him. And it's like, just trying to tee you up there. That one we watched the other day where your man's going around, I think it was Confederate people from America, and he's trying to, like, you don't think slavery was right, though, do you? And your man doesn't really answer the question. He goes, I'm going to ask you this again. And I think
it was Jordan Zephyr,
these easy T-balls of, like, the answer's there, and they're like, yeah, well, it's like, no, we'll try one more time. And it had that vibe about it. And I as you say, performance piece seems to.
It seemed like, and like, you know, he's a very talented artist, Kanye West, obviously. His music and beats in particular, like, I like him as a rapper, and it's
the ripple effect. Isn't it? Like, there's a ripple of, it's not just the comfort and the healing and the wisdom and the escapism that it brings to people directly from Kanye. It's the ripple effect that he has on all the other artists that ripples on and brings them comfort, because it's, maybe they don't agree with, or they don't vibe with Kanye stuff, but they'll vibe with something that's got a little taste of it, and it inspires other artists. And as artists, it's something that we put up there with kind of soft skills, and it bothers me.
Like,
because it's more feelingsy and more emotional and less rational and concrete. We pay it less mind, as if that's where this fulfillment feeling that we're looking for is going to come from, something really rational. But the feeling of contentment and of a calm animal brain isn't from our rational brain at all. Because if it was, we'd just say be happy and it'd be like sweet. But it's not that. So it has to come from that emotional animal brain, and that's what art speaks to, and almost turns it concrete, because it's the wording of something or the design of something. It's like that resonates with me. I don't really know why, but I'm drawn to it, and it does these things for me. So it's that ripple effect that they have on other artists. And it's hard to just say, he's gone off the deep end a little bit, so we best not and never listen to his music. It's a bit of a shame.
It is, and like you know, the Woody Allen thing. He's one of the most influential filmmakers of all time. Definitely one of the most influential screenwriters of all time, because you can see so much of his influence right through to today. You know, films coming out, and it's a shame. And I think what affects some of the films is that he's in them. And I think, you know what I mean? So like Manhattan is, it's funny, I used to call it one of my favorite films, but I don't really know. And because in it, right, now I can't remember his exact age in it, but you know, he's a 46-year-old man in it or something like that. And he's dating a 17-year-old. Now it's not illegal.
Yeah.
But it does make you think twice about it, you know.
It's too distracting.
That's what the problem.
To enjoy the thing anymore.
Yeah, because if it, not that I would say, I still think that's a bit too much of a gap. People can do what they want. But if it wasn't Woody Allen as the actor,
you wouldn't even know it.
No, it would have been a different way of looking at it. So that's been a shame for me, because when I look at his films that he's not in, I definitely think differently about them.
You admire the mark he's left on.
Yeah.
I mean, I was watching, I like Louis C.K.
Yeah.
And in one of his stand-ups, he's basically jacking off on stage.
Oh, dear.
Now, I have to fast forward through that now, because it's not funny anymore.
No, yeah.
This is what emerged.
If people don't know, just tell people, Louis C.K. is a comedian who was jacking off in front of his employees, was it?
Well, it was like other female comedians.
Oh, that's right.
And he was kind of using his influence to get them into the room, and then he would do his thing, I guess. And it, like, yeah, that's your thing. But it makes it not funny at all, actually, when he's doing it on stage. It's a bit like, so it's too distracting. So I can just fast forward through that a bit. But it's not like Louis C.K. as a person I know, the way you would Woody Allen as such. Because, I mean, what he did, you can't really put it up with the allegations that Woody Allen and Michael Jackson had. They're not, I mean, they're bad, but they're not. No, they're not that bad.
If you want a double hit, you can go watch Blue Jasmine, directed by Woody Allen, starring Louis C.K. Well, let me read this paragraph to you, Josh, because this is something that's kind of, let me get my phone. But this is something that's good. See, I have a good head of hair, not bald like some people. It's not talking. I'm not, obviously not Josh's fine head of hair, but I've been this has been happening a lot recently about George Orwell has been popping up in the podcasts I've been listening to, and you know, even some of the albums I know that I listen to a lot, like Hail to the Thief by Radiohead and Animals by Pink Floyd, are all, you know, hugely influenced by George Orwell. And I just think it came up recently again, and this is fascinating to me. So I'm going to read this paragraph, and so this is obviously a piece about 1984. So the state of mind that the party enforces through terror in 1984, where truth becomes so unstable that it ceases to exist, we now induce in ourselves. Totalitarian propaganda unifies control over all information until reality is what the party says it is. The goal of Newspeak is to impoverish language so that politically incorrect thoughts are no longer possible. Today, the problem is too much information from too many sources, with a resulting plague of fragmentation and division, not excessive authority, but its disappearance, which leaves ordinary people to work out the facts for themselves at the mercy of their own prejudices and delusions, right? So this is kind of things, again, that we've kind of touched on before, especially to do with news networks, CNN, Fox News, whatever they might be, 24 hours, Sky News as well, of course, but those 24 hours stuff of constant. You made a mention earlier on today, actually, funnily enough, you said like news isn't really news.
No.
that idea of being fed so much information that we've become so disillusioned that we actually don't know what's going on anymore,
Yeah.
and that it's being forced in upon us that we're making these rash decisions based on just too much going on. You know, what do you think of that? Or no, not what you think of it, but do you agree with that, or does this kind of thing even touch your life? Are you away from that kind of thing?
Christ, no. It's because it touches everybody's life in the West, because it's I mean, one of the ways I look at it is because of the internet, because of the availability of information, we also have availability of questions and thoughts that we wouldn't have necessarily come up with ourselves, whether we don't have the intelligence, whether we don't think deeply enough about that particular topic. So we never questioned it because our nature isn't to question things for the majority of people. But then when you watch someone like your Dawkins or your even Stephen Fry, Jordan Peterson, people who have thought really quite in depth about things, they're asking questions or mentioning things, and it's making people go, "Oh, that's true."
Well, it's annoying people as well.
Yes, because they don't necessarily have, they didn't have the, I mean, for lack of a better phrase, and this is just my bad.
No, we can never go, people.
It's if you're not intelligent enough to come up with the answer, sorry, the questions, you're probably not intelligent enough to come up with the answers. So they're posing questions like, just like the Enlightenment of, well, God's not real, and it's a bit like, well, for the last 1,500 years we believed it because no one's questioned it until the Enlightenment period, when we could record things, we could write things down, we could spread the question of, well, what, like the particular example was the Enlightenment. I can't remember the man's name, which is awful. I think it was Dr. James Hart or something like that. He was walking along Hadrian's Wall, and he realized that Hadrian's Wall is much younger than that mountain, but that mountain has a lot more wearing than this wall, and this wall is this old because it's Roman. So the world must be more than 6,000 years old. Jesus. Intelligent enough to make those observations, and then that question seeps into the culture. God's not real, by the way. Oh, but we haven't so we throw out the religion, we just get rid of it, and then it puts its own nail in the coffin, let's be honest, and it lets itself down, similar to the way artists have let themselves down. The human aspect lets it down, so we get rid of it, and then I think you're left with a vacuum, because the animal, whether you like it or not, has an absolute need for beliefs in religion, effectively. So it will fill the hole with something, whether you like it or not, whether you think you're rational or not, it needs it. So you'll be drawn naturally towards something that agrees with your current view of the world, hence news or political parties. And I think what we're seeing is political views becoming religious. And you can see our reaction is, you're either with us or against us. That's completely tribal. Politics was never supposed to be that. And politics can't serve that purpose. And I think we're watching this fragmentation of people move one way or the other, like we did with religion. And we're moving into these tribes. And you have to be all this or all that, because anything else is too nuanced. It's too rational. And our draw to these ideas that we love to hear about, again, is the animal. And if you're used to the animal calling the shots, you won't question, you won't learn to question, you won't even listen to the other side. Even though it's uncomfortable to listen to it, both sides always have a point, because it's probably somewhere in the middle, which is the rational view. But we're not being taught to train our animals and train our emotions and deal with them properly. We're being told to sit in them and go with them and just trust them. And that's not stable enough to produce a culture, because culture and a society has to be stable. It has to be based in something that's stable. And it used to be religion. So we could all, you and I could be like, well, you're left leaning, I'm right leaning, but at least we believe this. At least we've got this string in common. Whereas as you move more and more to the left or the right, which is obviously individual versus hive, those two extremes, the more you move away from them, the less we have in common. And then the less we're allowed to have in common and even mention. Actually, I agree with you on that bit. We do need to make sure that's looked after. And then yours might be, but there is a little bit in the middle where you've got to take some personal responsibility. And it's just what we're seeing with the news is the news have stumbled across, I say news, these companies have stumbled across something that sells better than sex, which is outrage. And they've stumbled across that in the last 10, 15 years. So now they just keep finding it. It's like, it doesn't need to be news. It's just entertaining. That's why it's addictive. If it was news, it would just be as boring as just normal. Such and such down the road has just got a new car.
Yeah, and
it'd be that exciting.
Like Stella on last week's podcast talked about like because Network, there, one of my favorite films, it talks about it in that, and that's 1972, I think, and they talked about like the catchphrase, "If it bleeds, it leads," and that was going to be, you know, started with like, oh, the ambulance chasers and the police chasers, and they did see where the story was, and that's kind of what it is now. Like, it's the excitement, they need the excitement and stuff like that. But I think what like I noticed when COVID was happening at the time. Now I have a friend who's fond of a conspiracy theory. We'll just say that, but they are like really into them. Like, and it's all like, I asked that before when Arthur was on about like why is it just never just, I believe in this conspiracy theory, the rest are not too sure. It's like you have to believe one and believe all.
Yeah.
But it's funny because we were having a conversation, probably more of an argument, that I was saying, well, that's nonsense. This is the news here about COVID. This is the news here. And they were saying, no, I read it here. But I was saying, like, well, you probably read it on Facebook or, you know, something. And she said, well, where did you hear it on the news? And she kind of had a point, like, because then I'm thinking, like, well, how sure I am of that being 100% factual because it's on RTE or BBC, whatever. And she's thinking, like, well, this could be factual. Like, why is this less news than what you're watching? And then I was confused. And the argument was over, though. At least that was the one thing. It was like, okay.
But it's that confusion that we feel.
Yeah.
That pushes us to the religious ends of things, because we have to, if you're starting to question fundamental, real, deep questions, we're not able for it, because now we don't know where the edges are of anything. And we're just a bit like, oh, Jesus. So we've got nothing to stand on. We need that stable ground. So conspiracies, that's stable ground. The news, that's stable ground. Because I mean, I've tried to talk to my parents about it. Like they love a bit of MSNBC and all that stuff, and they sort of mainline it for 6 hours a day at home. So it's funny to see them change the personality to move more left and all that sort of stuff. And I'm trying to like, there's no way of getting through now, because they've decided this is the source. And that's it, because they'd rather have an incorrect source that makes them feel better than open that can of worms of, Jesus, if I can't trust that, what can I trust? And it's that we're watching happen. Everyone's feeling that. Everyone's like, Jesus, what can I believe? What can I trust? And mix that in with all the other overwhelm. We are not designed to deal with it. Our brains cannot deal with it. And that's what we're watching happen. People are scrambling around for some certainty. Now, the way I did it was I reduced my world. I stopped watching the news. And the first argument, I think, is an animal brain argument, which is, well, how do you keep informed?
Yeah.
And that's assuming that what I'm watching on the news isn't first of all, information I need to know that I can do anything about. Probably not. And that it's important for me to know, and that it's important to me, and all these sorts of things, and whether it's really being informed about stuff, because I'm getting your view that all your higher ups or all whatever has agreed that we can give this message out and it's fine. So should I trust that? Should I believe that? Is that what we call being informed?
Yeah, I think it's just fascinating that, to me, that somebody who, you know, was born, I don't know when Orwell was born, but obviously, you know, if Animal Farm and, you know, 1984 came out around the 40s, you know, I'm assuming he was born in the 1900s. It's fascinating that all the stuff that so not all the stuff he saw, but some of the stuff he saw came through, you know, the Big Brothers watching, all that kind of things. But look, I don't do links, but this is a link, man. So Room 101, the TV show.
Yeah.
Some people might not know that comes from 1984.
It does, yeah.
The room, that all your fears and things like that, and the main characters are rats, and I won't spoil the ending for you, but it's a good book, and there's a good film of it as well. We're going to do this just a little bit of Room 101, and 5 things we dislike about modern life, right? When I was writing this episode, I was kind of in the process of thinking, like, well, what we talk about. I had no idea what we're going to talk about, but I needed a bit more. And I was walking out of the shop the other day, the supermarket, and there was a woman standing right in the doorway on her phone, like right, like you couldn't be more center. You know what I mean? And I thought, well, that's my problem. People, and it happened actually when I was in Dublin there week before, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. And when you come off the dart, you go down like a ramp, obviously for wheelchair access and stuff. But there's two sides, so some people can come up this way and some people go down. But it was quiet. We're going down, and there's one person just standing right in the middle of the aisle, like on her phone. Just like I think, do you know what it is? I think sometimes where I go with it is like, how are you so oblivious to the stuff that's going on? But there's a little bit of selfishness about it. It's like I'm so important. I'm just going to stand right here, in your way.
I'm not sure it's even importance, is it? I think it's just complete obliviousness to.
That's meant.
I mean, we've a joke in one of the pharmacies I work in that they're called main characters now. So people who are really. They're really just aggressive about stuff. They're really they take everything personally. Yeah. They're just very difficult to deal with. We've started calling them main characters.
Do you give them nicknames? Each nickname?
No. It's just we've got a main character there.
Can I tell you why we used to work in Sony Centre, right? And there was like we'd have nicknames for different fella, right? But my favorite one, right? So the counter was the counters were We Are. And there was the biggest TV that we had at the time in Sony, whatever it was, 50 inch or something, was at the front of the shop. We used to call this fella Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, right? Because he'd come in and he'd always crouch down and look at the DVD player underneath, and he'd leave. He'd never do anything else. He never bought anything.
That was his thing.
That was it. But we had nicknames. We had Sinbad. He was in there as well. But we had nicknames for everybody. Nothing too bad. Like,
we weren't being dickheads
or whatever.
To get through the day.
Just to get through the day. But I get that in the pharmacy as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's just,
they're just main characters.
Yeah.
Now, it's probably unfair because they're not thinking, "Oh, I'm better than you."
Yeah.
I just don't think they think about other people.
Yeah,
they're so caught up in their own little bubble, which is fair enough, I guess, that they don't think about, "Oh, geez, I'll just move to the side."
Yeah, it's
like
weird.
It's just it doesn't cross their mind. So I don't. I think it's tempting to think it's an arrogance and it's their show and it's they're the main character of the movie. We're just extras.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's that sinister. I think it's just. It's almost human nature to not think. It's like we're almost trained with our overthinking.
Yeah.
To sort of not get in people's way and be like, well, I'll just do this, or to solve problems, because we're almost scanning for problems to solve, and one of them is don't get in people's way.
Yeah.
Like don't just be inconsiderate.
Don't be inconsiderate.
Yeah.
So like, give us one of yours then.
WhatsApp groups.
Interesting.
I don't like WhatsApp groups. I think they're there's so much when it's multiple people. It's hard enough when you're with people and you can see their reaction and watch how what you just said landed. But very often you could be in one mindset, text something, and it lands on someone who's not in the same mindset, and it gets read incorrectly and it offends them and it becomes a problem. And then it's like, it's remembered that they said that, but we never discussed about what we meant by it. Whereas in person, we can read the room and there's an atmosphere and we're either all up or all down. And you can look and see, he's in a good mood. I'll make a little jab or we'll have a little laugh.
Yeah.
You don't get that in WhatsApp groups. So when that person reads it, what mood are they in? It's completely different. If you've got a day off and you're texting them, they're in work and they just had a horrible meeting, or they're paranoid because their bosses or their equals are trying to get them fired or whatever it might be, and they read something where you're quite lighthearted about it, it's not going to land the same. And that's hard enough with just texting, let alone with a whole group of people. So WhatsApp groups, as useful as they can be, I think they're more harm than good.
My problem with them would be the opposite side at the end of it, where it's just that, if the conversation is kind of between two people, but it's in the group and it's like ding, ding, ding. And because I have to check I can't leave it just dinging. It drives me because
26 messages.
And you keep looking and so they kind of,
and when you're reading halfway, I could have made a comment.
I would have had a great one for that. I'm very good for that. But another thing I noticed, something I used to kind of watch when I watched TV, like not films, like panel shows and stuff. The kind of lighthearted ones, QI and Mock the Week and
all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
Jesus, they're bad now. Like they're so banal. It's like, because even QI is a bit more, it's a bit more than those. There's a bit more hybrid. But I was watching the other night, and I like Sandy Toksvig. She's not as good as Stephen Fry, which is fair enough. But that's you know, he retired. You have to get someone else. But like, it was like Johnny Vegas. Like, Jesus, how did he ever get a job? You got Jimmy Carr, and a couple of other people on it, and well, Alan Davis is on it, who doesn't know when to kill a joke. But I just find it, the stuff they talk about and the jokes they make are like, did I used to find it funny? Like, or did I just watch them for a kind of comfort food?
No, I mean, my view on that would be there's two things. I think we're now not, you've got to be really careful.
Yeah.
And that's
Jimmy Carr does anyway.
Humor is on the edge of it. And now the edge has moved so much where you can't really say anything. On the one hand, if you're an offensive comedian, now's your time.
Yeah.
But if you're kind of lighthearted has changed. So what used to be considered lighthearted is now quite offensive and cancel worthy. So I think if you look back and watch the stuff from the 90s, it's just funny stuff. But if you said that now, it's a bit like, it's harder to do. So when you're watching these panel shows like the BBC and Channel 4, they've got a lot of people to answer to politically. So they've kind of got to be banal and bland and just be like, yeah, we won't touch that because it's offensive. But when you're trying to be funny, like,
you have to
the point is to be offensive, because it's just like that, you shouldn't have said that, and that's why it's funny.
Sometimes you watch the old stuff now though, and you're like, right, there's one thing like you're being funny and you're not trying to be offensive, but sometimes the stuff is just downright offensive.
Well, no question they're going to stumble, but now you're not allowed to stumble.
No, yeah.
And that's the difference, because if you stumble, it's over. Whereas back then you could stumble and go, I'm sorry about that. I was trying to find the line that was funny and offensive, because it is a balance. But now you're not allowed the balance. And redemption is also not a thing that's readily available. You've kind of got to just wait it out, which means no work, no phone calls, nothing's coming in. And that's, I don't want to do that.
No.
If I'm sitting on the top, I'm Alan Davis or whatever, and I've got enough dough, maybe I can let go of it. But I like what I'm doing. So I can either go with this joke, which is, it'll do, or I can go with this, which might get me cancelled. Like you can see why they would think that. So I think that's why you're watching banal, low level stuff. And it's not what it was, because it probably can't be the way it was.
Well, what gives another one then?
Jeez. Do you know what really bugs me? It's kind of counterintuitive to what I've been saying. When you email a company, and they don't answer for like so a week.
Yeah, it's very bizarre.
It's like, what are you doing? Like I've not sent you a letter in the mail and I'm waiting for you to send one back. It's like, oh yeah, sorry, we work in a warehouse, so we haven't got that. And I'm like, so I've been trying to talk to t-shirt suppliers, and I'll message them, and then a week goes by and they've not said it. I'm like, is this all right? Is it correct? Like, I'm trying to order something, I'm trying to give you business. And they'll go, yeah, we work in a warehouse, so it's tricky to be on the computer. Like, well, is there an easier way of, is there someone else I can talk to who is on the computer all the time? Or is there a way around it? Nothing, no answer. A week later, they'll answer a different part of the email, but not that part. And so then it's another week. And that bugs the hell out.
What's worse though, like not getting answered, or they get kind of snippy with you?
Not getting answered.
Because like someone got snippy with me in an email, right? Because I was waiting for something to be ordered, but there was two parts to the order. So one thing came, and immediately, because we overthink things and anxious and stuff, I'm like, did you forget the other bit, or is it coming or whatever?
Yeah.
And they were like, well, it's only been a day. So I was like, all right, Ken. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying.
I'm just looking for a bit of
it was just so good. Like, the email came, and look, but that's the same as what you're saying, the WhatsApp group. They probably didn't mean it offensive.
Yeah.
And I was on edge and whatever. But I took it as like, really like, oh, here we go. Who's this clown? You know,
and they probably, it's so difficult. I think it all ties into the overwhelm, because everyone's overwhelmed. They can't handle one more task, which is you saying, where's the other bit? That's just one more task that they can't handle. So they go, all right, and they act emotionally. But it's because they were on their phone all lunch, and they've ripped through all their dopamine, and now they've got no motivation to do anything. They're overwhelmed because they read about 5 different things that are happening in the world no influence over, and it makes them feel bad.
But then that message comes back, and then I'm angry. It's
I can't even wait 5 minutes for his thing.
It's just a cycle.
So they just take it out on you, and you're a bit like, well, screw that, and it's this negative reinforcement. So then you want to go on your phone, and it's just, I think it all ties into the fact that our culture, I think, exists in overwhelm, and I think that's why we're anxious and depressed, so many of us, because we're overwhelmed by everything.
We are, and something that I have on the list as well. It's obviously a slightly different thinking, but the lack of critical thinking, and I kind of come at it from.
Is that a modern thing though?
I think it's definitely, when I come at it from an art perspective. So like, you know, I'd read a lot of reviews and stuff of films and books and music and stuff like that. And now it's like, this is crap, so don't go to watch it, right? This honestly, or this whole thing about spoilers. Oh God, don't spoil it. God, don't tell me what happened to Captain America. What am I going to do? But when you go back, and I go back, I bought a book. Pauline Kael was one of the most famous film reviewers. Everything is explained in a review. It doesn't. It's not. It's worried. They're worried about the work of art as a whole, rather than about the ending of something, or, you know, the twists and all that.
Slight imperfections.
Like, she would really, like, now she was particularly great at it, like, but she would really dig into like what it was as a piece of art, you know. And the same goes for music. Like, it's just like the idea of like, there's so much to an album. Like, you know, if someone like, we can see like the Beatles, whoever it might be. There's so much than just, you know, the hit song, because they'll always focus them in on the hit song and stuff, and then the rest they'll kind of discard without even thinking about it, unless it's this masterpiece, like, you know, which there aren't many anymore. And books are the same thing. It's like everything has to be real secretive, so you can't dig deep into it. Then we can't talk about it, because, you know, that spoiler thing. And maybe I should have, instead of written about critical thinking, like, you're right, it's not a new critical thinking, the lack of it is not a new thing, but it's certainly going, if you go back to like reading reviews from the 50s through to maybe the 70s, 80s, they're so much better. They're written as, they're almost like works of art themselves. The way she writes a review, you're almost like, geez, I'll read that again. Like, you know, like,
does it come back to the shock thing?
Yeah.
Like, you're always trying to say something shocking.
I think so.
So the reviewer is trying to say something shocking or get clicks, because that's really what you're trying to get, is clicks and people to read it. So if yours is something that someone like yourself, who's let's say an expert in it, would read and appreciate, that's not what they're writing it for, because that doesn't make dough. Whereas if they could click by saying something offensive or outrageous about a small piece, it's just like Mackey's, isn't it? It's volume. You want to sell loads of it. It's not a Heston Blumenthal kind of art, food art. It's just crap, because that sells more. So I wonder if that's part of it.
No, absolutely it is, because, you know, we read our reviews online now, like, it's not the same. I also think they need to scrap the star system, the rating system, because it's so like, you know, this is like just an average film, 3 stars.
That's a good one, the stars, even on Amazon.
Yeah, even Amazon.
There's always someone who's ridiculous and puts 1 for everything, and they're always whinging about something. Or it'll be like, the book turned up and the print was different, or something like that. It's like, you don't review it. I don't care what the print was. But anyway, but then the 5 stars, can you trust those anymore? Because are they doctored? So you look at the 4s, then it's like, it's pointless now.
Did you ever see the cover? I can't remember what film it was. It doesn't really matter. But they did it just amazingly. So they had like the reviews at the top. So they had lots of stars. So they like, you know, the Daily Telegraph, 5 stars, whatever. But the Guardian had given it 1 star. But they managed to put it just in here, the Guardian on top, but all the other stars were beside it. So it actually looked like the Guardian to give it just as many as it. You know, they could just die. You know,
that's what I mean. Like, it's all that. It's like when they as soon as a website, because like Rotten Tomatoes, as soon as it becomes known, it's corrupted straight away. And so that must be across the board, like Amazon reviews. Well, they're corrupted straight away, because why wouldn't you pay people to give you positive reviews? Because that's part of the marketing budget. Get people to put positive reviews, and they'll lie about it. Job's a good one. So it's corrupted immediately as soon as it has popularity, which is the challenge of trying to find a good review site.
Yeah, and that's where I guess I've kind of given up on looking for reviews. I listened to someone like Mark Kermode on his podcast, and he doesn't do stars in that, but like, it just seems to my taste seems to fall in line with his perfectly, you know.
And I think that's what we're seeing, because that's where influencers are coming into their own. On if we can't trust an organization or a conglomerate or whatever it might be, a newspaper, a news outlet, you can trust this one person because so much of what they say resonates with me, and they're doing the research. So that one person now becomes, it's almost like a cult leader for some people.
Yeah,
but like,
but it's like, I don't want to waste my time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's I guess
that's another pressure as well. That might be one of my pet peeves.
Really,
is there's this. I know we have a short life, but rushing around trying to fill it with stuff, I don't think you can see it isn't doing what we wanted it to. It isn't making us more at ease with ourselves. It isn't helping us enjoy life. What it's doing is pushing away enjoyment. It's just moving it further and further off into the future. That's probably a pet peeve, because
you don't want to turn your love, like I would never want to turn my love for film or, you know, book something into something that's
monetizing.
But even I have to like plow through to get to the good stuff. That's why you want the people who you can relate to tell you, like, skip this one. You know what I mean?
Through the crap.
And that's what's great. And that's what's really rewarding. Like when you come in to watch a film, I was actually mocked the other day. Some people are probably saying, which time? But no, but I was mocked the other day for watching the film called Benedetta, and it's a true story about the 16th century in Italy and lesbian nuns, right? And immediately the person who mocked me said, like, "Oh, lesbian nuns, that's like it's porno or something." And I was like, "It's not really, like, you know." It's
a bit of a contradiction, but it's interesting.
Yeah, it's a contradiction, but it was interesting because of the idea of, like, they were battling against the kind of the attraction they found for each other to the, you know, what was drilled into them from when they were kids growing up about religion, and that could be the worst thing. But I was kind of like, I was questioning, like, why would you put that up to show people that you watch? But I put up every film because I don't care.
You're not looking for a
no.
It's
just
even
a
if
habit.
it opens a discussion. To be honest, like it's reviews. That's a good one, man.
Yeah, reviews. Yeah, that's just one I talk about. Any more?
I suppose the fact there's no news.
Yeah,
like you've no idea. Like what to, because I might go on BBC or I might go on Reuters or something like that, but I'm not 100. I've got to take it with such a big pinch of salt, and then you've got to find other websites. Like it's almost like you have to watch what Fox is saying about it and what MSNBC is saying about it, and think it's probably somewhere in the middle. I'll try not to get too emotional about it. Is it important? Does it really impact my current life? What parts can I control? And that comes back to the train and the animal. You're looking at bits you can and can't control. And I can influence how I'm training my chimp. I can't control it, or say chimp, like the animal brain. I can't control it, but I can learn to work with it and manage it. And I'd rather put my energy into that than trying to change how everyone else feels about things, because it just seems a bit stupid to me. And that's what 1984 is. I think it's turning away from dealing with your own stuff to dealing with the system, so you don't have to deal with your own stuff. So I think the lack of news, because I mean, what even is news? Like, it's basically gossip. But now that the world is so small in one sense, I'm learning about some tragedy that happened in India or China or wherever, and it's awful that it's happened, but I can't handle that.
Can't process.
What am I supposed to do with it? I can't do anything about it. And if I've heard 5 of those stories in a day, well, now my life is like, there's no major news in my life. My life is so boring. So the idea of boring has changed. Which is almost why you've got to accept, I'm boring. And then all of a sudden you don't feel boring about it, if that makes sense.
No, but
the news being close to impossible to get.
I heard it, you know. I was listening to
a really happy peppy.
Yeah, it's very upsetting.
Not lighthearted.
No, very upsetting.
But we knew that. We
know. If it was us, more likely. But do you know, I heard the story? I don't even know if I should tell it, because it made me feel really down about it. But you know the Peter Gabriel song "Don't Give Up"?
Yeah,
with Kate Bush.
I know quite well.
It's an amazing song.
One of my dad's favorite too.
Oh, sure, of course. You're a Peter Gabriel fan. I forgot about that. But do you know what that's about? Like, he read a story of a mother who took her own life while she was holding her baby.
Jesus.
And like,
is that the Jonestown thing?
No,
It's just some
it was
joke.
just some story from I think it's from England actually.
Jesus.
But it just kind of when like I know a lot of that song is about not being able to find a job and
Mm,
that time in England and stuff like that, and the struggles of that. But like you know, an artist like Peter Gabriel then takes, I suppose, bits and pieces from everywhere
mm,
and turns it into something else. But just when I read that, I was like, I was sitting in the office in Fusion, and it's just like you know, when you get like it's just the idea of it, like it just
mm,
freaked me. And like you're saying about stuff, that's what I said. Made me think of it. You said about news.
mm.
Like I can't quite process this right now. Like you
Yeah.
know, I'm just
Well, I mean that's one I have seen the idea that if you want to know what's going on in the world, read history.
mhm.
Because it's the same patterns repeating, it's the same human nature, it's the same responses to everything, it's the same back and forth, but
Yeah,
basically between the right and the left, between the rich and the poor, it's the same thing playing over and over and over with each generation. So there is that part of it of like you're reading the history, that was news back then, but who cares now?
yeah,
It's just ruthless. But it's like you can't it's the same tragedy. It's just different faces. It's the
yeah.
same tragedy that you're trying to process. And that's I think that's probably not a bad approach to it, is to
Mm.
read history more to kind of understand what's happening now. Because it's almost like if you're watching the news, you're almost too close to it
Mm.
to pull away and think, oh, well, it's just another argument between the haves and the have-nots, or it's just another left versus right. It's just another, the same kind of tragedies and the same kind of theater, I guess, to a
Yeah,
degree.
but I was told the other day in another disagreement. Let's just argue with people the whole time. But no, but it was a disagreement about mentioned about like Second World War,
Mm,
and I said something about the camps, and stuff
mm.
like that, and I was told, well, history is kind of told by the winners,
Doesn't apply.
and I was like, it's not the same thing.
That applies to ancient history.
Yeah,
I don't think it applies as much now when
yeah,
it's all
it's
recorded.
documented.
So
Yeah.
the last 100 years is different because it's all been documented
Mhm.
within reason, obviously, but you can kind of see both sides to it. You can listen to the winners and the losers. So I think that's it's
Yeah,
kind of a misapplication of a quote that used to be true
yeah.
or used to be more applicable. Whereas, yeah, we've probably got enough information from both sides to understand that, yes, there was a middle ground, but not when it came to
Yeah.
the extermination camps. That's pretty cut and
And I
dry.
think that's what's about that story in particular and about the concentration camps. There are tales from both sides when it comes to
Yeah.
that. There's actually a film I was supposed to message you yesterday about it. It was a film made by someone a lady who'd been in the concentration camp. I
Mm,
shouldn't remember her name, but she was like, she was a pioneer filmmaker as well.
mm,
Went into the camps and she made a film about in 1948, so 3 years after it happened.
mhm.
And it's supposed to be stunning. Like
Yeah,
I'd
I
say
can
it's
imagine it will be that
yeah.
raw and that
Imagine
close
that,
to it.
like
What I find, I know this is a bit off topic, but going into it a bit more, I think when people want to say, yeah, well, history's written by the winners or whatever, what that really is again, I think the animal brain protecting them from dealing with what happened.
I'm not saying
Because
this person is a Holocaust denier or anything like
oh
that.
no, I
It's
understand
just
that, but
yeah.
it's a way for them to not come to terms
Mm,
with what humans can do to one another and enjoy doing to one another,
yeah.
and possibly what you're capable of doing to other people. There's such a depth that we hide from
Mm,
ourselves. I think using that like our history's written by the winners, I mean it doesn't really apply, but it means they don't have to deal with it.
yeah.
Because I mean, if you look at the last 100 years and really study it, I don't need to watch the news. I'm
Mm,
overwhelmed by that. Like
yeah.
the stuff that was within a couple of lifetimes was just happening.
Mm,
And you're like, I just everything you've watched as a kid, all the Disney stuff, all the fluffy stuff, it's just blown apart.
yeah.
And it's just like, well, what do we do with that? Like, what do we do with that shadow part that's capable of, like, how do we know? How do we stop that happening
Mm,
again? How do we stop, like, and then when you read the individual stories on both sides, again, it adds even more confusion to it.
yeah.
Because so for some of the Nazis, like there's that book, what was it, Ordinary Men?
Mm,
It's just about a group of literally ordinary men from Germany who just wanted jobs. And then through increments, they find themselves killing Jews.
yeah.
and it's scary. Like, Jesus, that could be me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just looking for a job and some money, and just incrementally, you can just be taken into something that if they said it to you, well, yeah, do you want to come and do this? No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Whereas it's not done that way. It's just slowly but surely till it becomes normal, and it just that I find. I don't know how you can. That I find that humbling.
Yeah.
It's just like, Jesus Christ, what am I capable of? What can I do that I am hiding from myself? And I think almost pushing away those things like the Holocaust, like Stalin's Russia, moving them away by saying it's written by the winners. That's a cop out, isn't it? That's because you don't want to deal with that level of confusion of. Like, it's easy to think, oh, Nazis, it's just this evil, quite simple, evil, back to front, horrible thing. And then the Jews, back to front, pure innocence. But then you hear stories on both sides of individuals, because there was some savagery that had to happen to survive in the camps. And then there's some signs of humanity in the Nazis. And it just, you just look at it like, my silly little animal brain can't deal with grey. It has to be either pure evil or pure good, and you just sit there like, oh my God. So it's easier to go, about it.
Anything more light-hearted?
I'll just get on Twitter and make a joke.
Yeah, exactly, and get cancelled.
You're here for the light-hearted. I'm not.
No, but
we know I'm not.
No, but before we go, anything? No, there's
a couple. I can't remember the rest of my pet peeves.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
I had some things about pet peeves, but I suppose it doesn't really matter.
That's all right. I had some stuff as well, but like.
Yours are good though. I like yours.
Yeah, they're just mainly just things that annoy the shit.
Christmas songs in November.
And that's not a pet peeve for you.
It is.
You're mad after Christmas.
Yeah, in December. Don't ruin it. Like in November.
I know. Yeah,
I can understand you want to sell stuff in November. That's fine. But let's not ruin the Christmas songs. We've all heard them thousands of times.
Yeah.
So you've maybe got 2 or 3 listens before they annoy you again. So let's not use them all up in November.
And the new ones are terrible. Like the Ed Sheeran one with Elton John. Jesus Christ. Elton John sounds like he's one of a rage.
Struggling for money, so they probably.
Oh, the two of them are.
They just needed the Christmas.
Are very hard up, like. Yeah. But like, actually, speaking of like the new year and stuff, is there something like you're looking forward to it? Like, is that you someone who's like, well, I know you now, but like, is it just another few like this? The days turn over, and it doesn't really matter if there's a different number at the end of it.
Yeah, it really depends. It varies from year to year. Just to kind of depends what mood I'm in.
Yeah,
like I think you can make yourself feel a certain way about something. I think you can work yourself and be like, it's a new year, new me, and all that. Me, yeah. I've done that enough times, and I've experienced that new thing, new start. And it's always tomorrow. I'll always start tomorrow. And New Year's Day is just the day that you were saying, I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's just a bigger example of us all agreeing that we'll do it tomorrow because it's a fresh year, fresh start. Whereas I don't really buy into it anymore, because whatever I'm feeling, like, I'm going to start doing this. If I'm not doing it now already, I'm going to feel the exact same way tomorrow, and I'm still not going to do it. So saying I'll do it tomorrow, I think New Year's is just it's a bigger way of saying I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I like fair play. We talked about it already about resolutions and stuff. And fair play if people enjoy that kind of stuff. But for me, it's just the days just go. Like, it's just a number at the end of the year. It doesn't make any difference. I should still, I hope that I was still doing the same thing. Might add something in, like maybe take a couple of small risks like we talked about. But
I think that's a constant thing though.
Yeah.
I think you're either, as I say, with resolutions, if you do them, you're doing them all the time. If they're going to be successful, it's because you're constantly looking for little ways to improve in different areas all through the year. When you're a boom and bust kind of person, I'll do a resolution and it busts after a week, and then a month later you'll do it again. You're just booming and busting it, and it's just it's a different philosophy, and it's not as effective. So it just I'm not a boom and bust, and I kind of just keep trundling along down the middle.
I think that's fair enough, though.
And you have highs and stuff, but
keep going. But it's funny. I watched back my episode from a couple of weeks ago, and I was like nodding off during it, and I'm starting to feel that tiredness now. I get this time of the day. Yeah, that's probably is. No, I actually get it during the day, and we did have a good, like I said, we had a good training session earlier on as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like.
You probably haven't eaten enough yet.
Yeah, but probably not, and that's it was kind of strange because I forgot that's how I was feeling when I was recording. It was the Bono McGregor one, and then when I was thinking back on it, I better check the last few minutes of that, like, and I could see it in it, like maybe nobody else could see it, like, but I could certainly see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I felt that like kind of drag and my voice slowed down. But I recorded at the wrong time of the day. It was a bit earlier than this, actually. I'd had a long run that morning. It's just, I think the medication is it. I'm not saying it's the fault, but it's almost like it's combined around that time, in a swirl and kind of causing me to kind of nod off. And it's all right if I'm, downstairs.
Speaking of someone interesting.
Yeah, speaking of someone interesting.
Mate, yeah.
You've got a bit of an accent, actually. But I was actually going to put that joke in at the start and I forgot all about it. But you've been a fascinating guest as always.
That's too kind.
Much appreciated. No,
accurate,
it was.
But I appreciate that. It's nice.
It was great. I love having you on, and I love having you been able to come over rather than doing it on Zoom and stuff.
Yeah,
like
it's cool.
It's
nice.
Look, ideally, that's what we'll do in the down the road, start traveling to people and have a better camera and all that kind of stuff. I have to thank our Lord Savior John Francis for his tech skills.
I like to think somebody's help, John.
John,
that's my goal with these things.
Yeah, John, come back. Jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, and come and tell me how.
Yeah,
how it hit you, how these messages hit you.
Hard.
Useful.
I think he does. Yeah. Well, I hope he does. I hope like many people do. I always thank my mum, my dad, my granddad, Ger, and Calvin. Subscribe to our YouTube if you would. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, on the podcast platform, Spotify, Apple, Anchor, Google Podcasts, etc. Obviously, thanks everyone for watching and listening and all that kind of stuff. 155 episodes. Good going, isn't it? It's all right.
Fair play, man.
Going to miss a week at some point.
Consistency again.
It's the key, isn't it? Once again, Josh, thanks a lot.
Absolute
I appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Absolute pleasure.
I'm going to creepily approach the camera now to turn off the video. But there we go. Thanks very much, everyone. I don't know what all those things are. Anyway, take care. Bye.